I'm going to be honest, this video is going to be really unprofessional. It's more of a question of something that I wanted to test, and so I'm out here today to test it. And that is, how good is the cheapest pistol flashlight that you can get on Amazon? Let me pull it off here and I'll show it to you. So it looks like this. Instead of usual flashlights, which will have a clamp on one side, this one has this little flapper that presses down into the Picatinny slot. It slides on the front, and then you just hold that down and let it clip in. So the button is right here. You can see it goes like that. And it has 3 modes. So it is bright, dim, and then strobe. So those are the 3 modes. It's pretty simple. I've shot it a few times, but I haven't shot it much. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start by putting 50 rounds of 9mm through it. Then it also made some other claims. It said it was waterproof, and it said that it was shock resistant. And so after we put about 50 rounds through it, we're going to test those other things. And then I have a lot of other shooting to do today, so I'm not going to record that in this video, but you might see it on future videos. However, once I'm done with all of that, I'm going to just give you some thoughts on it. Okay, the one problem with that system, well, there are several problems with that system. First of all, I actually had to grind space away from the rails in order to get it on. However, once I did actually get it on, if it doesn't slide on just right, it doesn't want to fit. So I'm going to get that in there, put ammo back in this gun, and then let's shoot it a little bit. So I've got a couple of mags to run through this. I have a bowling pin set up down there that I'm just shooting at. What I'm actually hitting is not very informative to the flashlight itself. So I am going to turn it on for this, and we will see how it does. Okay, went through the mag. It is empty. Let's take a look at the flashlight. Still on? It is still on. You can see it right there. So it did hold up to that. Let's put a few more rounds into it. I'm going to reload my magazine, and then we'll take a look again. Okay, so one of the many things that I'm not a huge fan of with this flashlight is that it's really easy to turn it off and on when reholstering, since it is just a really easy back and forth button. But I will turn it on. For the record, there is nothing in the chamber while I was doing that. Chesting against my hand. So it is on now. I'm going to load up. This is 12 more rounds. We're going to shoot it, and then we're going to test some other things about it. All right, empty again, still on. Okay, so it's not doing too bad so far. And so first up, what we have is one of those cheap $1 flashlights that you may see at Walmart or Harbor Freight. So I'm just gonna start by pointing it at the ground and then send it out to this shed over here and then down that alleyway. Okay, this is my everyday carry flashlight. It produces 250 lumens, so you can see that it shows quite a bit more than the other flashlight did. Now, this is the bright setting, so it should be at 250. And then if I turn it to the dim setting, this is what you get, which is much closer to the other flashlight. Okay, next up we have the Streamlight 2LX. This one's going to be pretty bright, and that is what it produces. This one is also a 500 lumen flashlight. It is the Streamlight TLR7. I'm borrowing this from a friend. This is an actual pistol flashlight. Now finally, let's look at the cheapest pistol flashlight that you can get on eBay. And this one claims an outrageous 3,000 lumens. This should be like the brightest flashlight in the world. That is supposed to be 3,000 lumens. Now it is decently bright. Okay, now let's go to the dim mode. And that is what it gives us there. Okay, so I have some water right here. This is just a runoff of the Platte River. As you can tell, it is very disgusting. They claimed that this was waterproof, and so I'm just gonna put it in the water, swish it around a little bit, and see how it does. So let's turn it on, and I'm gonna hold the on switch, just to make sure that I don't accidentally flick it off, because that's really easy to do. Okay, still on. Let's put it in different ways. All right, it is still on after all that. Okay, I'm gonna move it down a little bit more, scrape it in the mud a little bit, and just kind of, I don't know if that's gonna actually do anything, but you know what, we're just gonna, different things can break different mechanical items and electronic items, so we're just gonna let it do that. Okay, it's not turning off. That could just be gunk inside of the switch, so I'm gonna put it in the water again. All that wash out. Okay. Oh, there we go. For a little bit there, it was only doing one setting. It wasn't switching between the three. Now it's only doing strobe. So it seems like the electronic components did get messed up. However, it does still work. So right now it's on. Turn it off, change it. Now it is on dim, I think. And then now it is on strobe. So it is switching back and forth again. So it seems like it's somewhat past the test of what a normal handgun would be subjected to. Now, I do want to be clear, for a little bit there, it did have an issue where at one point it would only stay in the one setting, so it wouldn't switch. First it was, I think, the strong mode, and then it was the strobe. However, now it is going back and forth between the three. And you might see some different color things where it looks like it's strobing when it's not actually. That's just because of frame rates and cameras and that kind of thing. However, they also made a claim that it was shock resistant. And so I'm just gonna take it into these trees over here and smash it against some stuff. We're gonna see how it does. So this tree has some loose bark, and because of that, it's not getting hit very hard. That seems like a good first test, but for the second test, let's hit it against something a little bit harder. It is not switching on or off, it is just stuck on. Okay, it appears that the issue was there was a little bit of sand stuck in there. So that is definitely an issue, a prone weakness of this flashlight, but it didn't break. Let's try it again. This pin is starting to come out right here. It is the pin that holds the, I don't know what you call it, like the flapper in place. Let me see if I can just drive that back in. Okay, and there is actually starting to get scuffed up a little bit. I'm gonna hit it specifically, so I'm just gonna smash it against things with the lens side first. They say that this has one of those tactical bevels so that you can hit it up against something and maybe do more damage or cause more injury than without something like that. So, because it's meant for that, let's try it. Okay, let's take a look at this again. All three settings are still working. I did crack the lens a little bit, and I haven't put it in water since this, but there is water under the lens, and so that was just from the water test. After it dried off, you can see that there is still water under it after it's all off the surface. And it did start to unscrew on me a little bit. I promise that was tight when I did the water test. For the sake of thoroughness, I'm gonna stand on the top of this log, check it at this about as hard as I can, and we're just gonna kind of see what happens. We're gonna see if we can break it. Now, I didn't talk about this earlier, however, just as a preliminary test, I did do a lot of like dry firing and that kind of thing with this light, just to test it out before I started using live ammo. So normally what that would look like is a draw, grip like that, and then I would turn it on or whatever. Let's take a few more shots. Well, that wraps up the video on this flashlight. However, I do want to give some personal opinions. So what is the thing like this good for? Well, it is really cheap, and even though it fared well in this test, I don't know if I would necessarily trust it with my life in a duty application. Another thing that I personally don't like about it is that it goes through the settings in a 1, 2, 3 type format. And in my opinion, that has a lot of flaws because you might want to be doing one thing and you actually get to something else. Some things that filter through these settings, the way that they work, is it will go 1, and then if you leave it on for a little bit and then turn it off, it resets to 1. However, with this one, if you leave it on for a little bit and then turn it off, it still goes on to 2 and then 3. So it just cycles through those modes with no choice of the user about what they want. And so because of that, I wouldn't use it in any type of setting, because if I'm in a situation where I'm trying to use my pistol light to see better, I don't want it to start strobing, because that might negatively impact rather than positively impact my vision. Another thing I don't like was that I had to modify this light in order to get it to fit my handgun, and that is another big issue with the rail. It might not fit precisely to your firearm, so you might need to make it looser or make it tighter. I just have a little Picatinny section clamped onto my shotgun right here, and this flashlight will not really fit on there. It's just too small of a space. It's probably said it would get a really, really tight fit, but if it's going to damage whatever I clamp it onto, then this $13 flashlight is not worth it. Thankfully, in this case, I needed to make it looser because making it tighter would probably be darn near impossible. The second thing I don't like about the rail is this whole flapper mechanism. It doesn't really give you any opportunity to adjust where you want it on the firearm in the way that you can do with some other lights. Okay, so that covers the rail. Now let's talk about the switch. The thing I don't like about the switch is that they advertised as ambidextrous and it is not. As I've already said, I don't like the 1, 2, 3 feature, because if I want one of the things, I might not always have that one queued up and ready to go. Now, the other thing I don't like about this is it's two-handed, so you can't just press this button and then press it again. You need to use your other hand to press it in the other direction. And so it's not just a one-switch thing, it actually sort of has two that it goes back and forth. Also, as we saw a few times when I threw it in the dirt, stuff got stuck in the gap here as it goes back and forth. And so because of that, it was either stuck on or stuck off. And so I'm not a huge fan of this switch system. The battery cover held on fine, so I don't really have any qualms there. However, the lens cover is something I do have an issue with. One, water did get under the lens cover, and that can be a big problem. That can cause issues. So that probably means that if I had left it in the water for a few minutes, it probably would have broken. Maybe in part 2 of this video, that's something that we'll try. Now, the other issue I have with this is that it did start to become unscrewed as I hit it many times. I use a Streamlight flashlight, and I carry it with me almost every day, and I really like it, and the caps do not come unscrewed no matter how much I abuse it. This one became unscrewed very easily. And then also the lens cover cracked under heavy strain, so it was not as strong as they would like to think. If I take this off for a second, actually there is liquid under this where the battery is, and I can smell lithium, which is not a good thing. That's a horrible smell. It's probably going to give me some sort of horrible disease in the future. So when I press in on this, I can feel it shifting. This is just a thin piece of plastic, and I am not a huge fan of that. Now, I am going to take these components out of here to hopefully let them dry off before I try and do part 2. So all of that being said, I am 8mm Mauser Man, and I tested the cheapest pistol flashlight that I could find on Amazon, and I lived on.
Which proves it's hard to get the best of a man named John. Named John.